So how long did you take? How long was the shoot in India itself?
15 days.
And then you traveled to what all countries?
We'd travelled already to, it was a brisk trip. Yeah, I didn't do a lot of sleeping, but we'd been to Turkey, to Britain, and to the United States, and also some interviews in Australia on the East Coast.
Wow.
Yeah.
As a filmmaker, and we talked already about how it impacted you. When you walk away from this project, because the film is going to be shown now, and around the world, actually, 3 major countries at least. What do you learn from this experience as a filmmaker in terms of
so much
mankind?
So much.
Humanity?
Yeah. I don't think I've actually learnt so much on a single project before, and I feel like I've learnt a lot before, but this has been off the scale. I think that what it's really taught me is that individuals who undergo an experience really have the most important things to say about it. So I've worked in current affairs journalism before. I was a producer on Four Corners, which is the ABC's flagship current affairs program in Australia. So, and other documentaries I've made. I've made big political documentaries and interviewed most of Australia's living previous prime ministers, all of them actually. And experts, academics, activists. I'm used to interviewing people like that. But I think it's really taught me that the people who actually live through events have the most fulsome things to say about them. And especially if you can speak to them early enough, then they really are crucial to speak to. Yeah. And the whole framework that we laid out for it at the beginning, that we wouldn't attempt to unpack the politics. We knew that people like the BBC and CNN would be doing big political analysis stories. So it was territory that we didn't feel that we were burdened to cover, that we could just focus on the personal. It was really a very happy decision, a very productive decision at the beginning, because by just asking individuals to tell us what had happened to them, a very rich account of the politics actually comes out, and it comes out in the first person. So for instance, Meltem Moysanoglu, the Turkish woman who was unfortunate enough to be a personal hostage of the gunman for 8 or 9 hours, tells this story that I think really captures the background that these young men had come from. You know, you can read in the newspaper about disadvantage and discontent and restlessness and try and wrap your head around it. Or you can hear this story, which was that they at one point went into a hotel, into one of the rooms, and she and Saifi, her husband, quickly grabbed a glass of water. They were very thirsty. And the young gunman looked at the water and could not understand how they got it. These young men did not know how to use a tap. They didn't know how to use a tap. And to hear that story, at some level it's very personal. You suddenly get where these guys have come from. And it doesn't for a second condone what they did, but it provides a context that's absolutely essential to trying to pick our way through why these things are happening and what we might be able to do to change them, I think. So the main thing that it taught me was how powerful those personal stories are. Yeah.
How does a film like this really change the world? How does it impact the world?
Well, I wouldn't be pompous enough to answer that question.
No, seriously, I mean, when people are sitting and watching it, I mean, they're completely blown away by the stories. It's amazing what these people went through, the survivors. But in your view, what do you want the audiences to take from it and sort of?
Well, I can tell you what I take from it and what I hope is there. So for me, always as a documentary maker, it is, I don't think of myself as a journalist. I think of myself as on a little bit more of a personal journey than an exercise of reportage, I guess. And so I meet these people, I spend a lot of time with them, I become quite close to them, and their story leaves particular impressions on me. And I guess what I hope to do is to share that with the audience and to give them some of the experience I've had. And then what they make of it is actually up to them. But these are the things that have made an impression on me that I hope will have some effect on the people who watch it. I guess the first is this very curious sense that these people who were under siege, I mean, some of them hiding in toilets, hiding under tables, hiding under beds, hiding in cupboards for hours, for days, still managed not to be entirely powerless, still found ways to take control of their situation, to gather information and then make decisions about what they needed to do. And in that sense, they kept their fate really in their own hands. And I think what that does is to throw something back at the whole notion of terrorism, and that you can be rendered a victim instantly. And the people that I met did not have that experience. That's the first thing. The second thing is this phenomenal sense of mercy that they bring to bear at the end of the film. You would expect that anyone who went through this, I mean, there's a woman in the film who lost her husband in the course of this. All of these people thought they were about to die for hours, if not days. Some of them witnessed close-up executions, and none of these people calls for vengeance at the end of the film. None of them feels hatred, and you would expect that they would. They don't. And what they do seem to have that's, I think, quite confronting is a very focused sense of their shared humanity with the gunmen. A sense that these, however monstrous their actions, these were still human beings. And I'm still processing that myself, and I expect the audience to process that for a while too. And then I think the third thing that's been so powerful for me, you talked about the Turks, and for me really they're the central characters in the film. They're Muslims, and they survived because they announced early on that they were Muslim, and then they had the terrible misfortune of being the hostages, the personal hostages of these gunmen for 8 or 9 hours.
Everybody else being killed.
Seeing everybody else being killed, yeah. And the way that they went through that experience and the way that they recount it is absolutely interlaced with their faith. And they are gorgeous people. And at many moments in the film, they are absolutely courageous and incredibly selfless. There's a moment that they describe when they witness 3 women being executed. And their conviction is that they too are about to be executed. They think that they are now experiencing their last seconds of life. And what they choose to do with those seconds is to step forward, get on the ground and pray for these 3 women. They offer up their Muslim prayer for the dead. And in that second, I'm feeling, it's quite emotional to even talk about it. In that tiny moment for me is a phenomenal counterpoint of shared humanity to the version of the world that we often see in the news, which is about profound division between Islam and the West. And their story of that is a story about shared humanity. And really, I think anyone who watches it would have trouble continuing to secretly harbour the prejudice that Islam and terrorism are somehow naturally wed together. I hope the audience, draws all those 3 things. And in an hour's film, that's a lot to convey. So, there are things we haven't talked about. I know that it isn't, and it doesn't set out to be a film about the attack on India and the people of Mumbai, because we knew that other people had made that film. But this film and what it has to say, I think, are important. These are important ideas, and I hope that's what the audience takes away from it.